So it looks like some universities won't be requiring the SAT or ACT standardized testings anymore for their admissions requirements, which is blowing my mind right now. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about exactly what you need to know about this. Which universities have specialized contingencies that will affect your admissions process preparation for 2021 and the future, and what it means for you, and how to best take advantage of this to up your chances into getting into that university that you've always wanted to get into. Let's get started. So the first school I'm going to be covering is my own school, which is Georgia Tech. Now, as watchers of my channel, you might be interested in attending Georgia Tech as a freshman in 2021 or in the future, so pay close attention. This stuff will be really important and vital to you in the admissions process. So here we go. In Georgia Tech's official press release statement, they did mention that although the USG guidelines mentioned that SAT and ACT won't be required for the 2020 incoming class, Georgia Tech has already accepted its first-year students, and so thus this rule does not apply to them. As for any other mentions about SAT, ACT not being applicable in 2021 or being test blind, there is no mention of that, and so Georgia Tech will be continuing to use ACT and SAT scores in their admissions process. However, they did mention that there will be updates and there might be other things that come along the way as this virus pandemic develops, and so if there are any updates, I will be sure to make a specific video on that on this channel, so all of you will be able to know exactly what it is and how it may affect you and how it'll affect your admissions process preparation. And so even though Georgia Tech will still be using these tests and metrics as part of their admissions process and evaluation, I did mention in the title of this video that there are lots of big universities and systems that will no longer be using the SAT and ACT metrics. So now we're going to be diving into 4 of those, which are all big, well-known universities and systems that a lot of people want to apply to that have different responses to this limiting of standardized testing. The first school we're going to be looking at is going to be the University of California system. Now, the University of California system is actually designing their own sort of test for its California residents and applicants, but will not be available as a sort of test for the out-of-state or international students, which is kind of confusing, but we'll get into that real quick. I have a direct quote from their official release saying that the suspension will allow the university to create a new test that better aligns with the content the university expects students to have mastered for college readiness. However, if a new test does not meet specified criteria in time for fall 2025 admission, UC will eliminate the standardized testing requirement for California students. So this essentially means that the standardized testing ACT, SAT is going out the window. But this break in testing is also going to allow the University of California to create a test that's specifically catered towards them. However, if you look at the next quote that I have prepared, meanwhile, President Napolitano will ask the Academic Senate to work with university administration to determine the appropriate approach for out-of-state and international students beginning in 2025. Regardless of whether or not the University of California creates a new test for its California residents or not, the SAT and ACT will be phased out by the end of 2025. So what they have planned is 2021 and 2022 will be test optional. 2023 and 2024 will be test blind. That means it won't be considered. And by 2025, the UC system has high hopes that they'll be able to have some sort of new metric for determining academic success and academic prowess in these metrics that the ACT and ACT used to judge. Moving on to the next school, it's an Ivy League school, which is actually, the rest of these 3 are also all Ivy League schools, but the first one is Cornell, and Cornell has temporarily suspended requirements of ACT and SAT in the near future. But I did mention that every college and university in this example in this video has some sort of separate aspect to this canceling of the ACT and SAT, and in Cornell's case it's kind of confusing because the athletes of all people applying to Cornell still have to complete the SAT and ACT. This applies, however, to all of the Ivy League schools because in order to be an Ivy League athlete, in order to apply to Cornell to be an athlete, you have to comply with the Ivy League athlete regulations, and they still require the SAT and ACT. So that means you're an athlete and you're applying to Cornell and you want to be a Cornell athlete, you still have to take the ACT and ACT in order to comply with these requirements set by the Ivy League Athlete Association. And you might be thinking, like, what is Cornell and all these other Ivy and prestigious colleges and selective colleges gonna base their admissions process decision on if the SAT and ACT won't be required? After all, this test is something that the better you do, the better chance you have at getting that coveted application acceptance letter. And Cornell has stated in their official press release that secondary education grades and other sorts of classes and coursework will be counted more heavily towards the decision-making process. In addition, evidence of commitment and effort to pursuing other challenging learning experiences results from other kinds of secondary college preparatory and university qualifying testing where applicable and verifiable. And so I'm not really sure what this really means because there aren't really any other tests that do this. But I guess what they're just trying to say is that they're going to be looking at every other piece of the application more thoroughly. So this would probably be meaning essays or the classwork that you take, or maybe even your GPA and class rank. Things like that will be of more importance now that the SAT and ACT standardized testing won't be required. And so now moving on, we've gone through UC, we've gone through Georgia Tech, we've gone through Cornell. Now let's go on to two more big prestigious universities. I'm talking about Harvard. I'm talking about Princeton, UPenn. We'll get into those schools. First, let's cover Harvard. Harvard University has stated that they will also not be requiring standardized testing scores. But if you read it carefully, it says SAT subject test, which means you still have to take the SAT or ACT, but you don't have to complete the other additional subject test requirements that these universities once required. And these are tests like the math test, the physics test, the chemistry test. All of these really specialized subject tests will no longer be required for your application starting 2021 and beyond. In addition, Harvard University in its official press statement has stated that they will also not be considering AP scores as part of the admissions decision process. Now, I don't know if the scores for the AP test ever played a part in the decision-making process. I'm not an admissions recruiter, I'm not a director of that sort of stuff, so I wouldn't really know. But if it did in the past, it's no longer gonna help in your Harvard decisions process going 2021 onwards. Let's move on to the final school, which is Princeton and UPenn. Policy is similar to Harvard's in that they will still be requiring SAT and ACT, but they will be dropping the requirement of the SAT subject test, which I think for Princeton was at least 2. So you don't have to take those anymore. That's all fine. They aren't required anymore, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. However, the AP scores will still be used in the admissions process decision, unlike Harvard. So those scores will still be factored into whether or not you get into those universities or not. And so in this video, we covered 5 main universities or systems. However, dozens and dozens of other school systems have also released their own specialized press releases stating whether or not you have to take the SAT, ACT, or if you only have to take the SAT, ACT and not be required to take the subject test. And due to this really rapidly changing environment in terms of updates and situational things that this virus pandemic has been causing, I really recommend all of you to go to the specific university homepage to find all the updates that you want if I haven't mentioned that specific school in this video. Now, my opinion on this entire situation is, should you continue preparing for the SAT and ACT like it will be continuing to be used in the near future? I think yes, you should still be preparing for those standardized tests, whether or not these universities will require them in the future or not, because the other hundreds of universities still require the SAT and ACT. Even schools like Harvard, Princeton, and UPenn will still require the base standardized test. You just won't need the subject test anymore for the foreseeable future. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching my video today. Really hope you enjoyed it. Smash that like button if you liked it. Comment down below and subscribe to my channel by pressing that red button right down there if you haven't already. And I will see you all in the next video. Ciao.